So great to see everybody on the line, and thanks so much to everyone that organized this and put this together tonight. So let's go ahead and get started. I know we want to go over a brief presentation that I have for everyone on X39 and stem cell technology, and then we're going to spend a considerable amount of time on question and answer. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Okay. Now, sometimes if you let me talk, these presentations can take an hour or two, but we're going to try to get through it as quickly as possible. You know, we can really do a deep dive into this information. And in fact, when we did our product launch on X39, there was a full 8 hours of information and then a 3-hour question and answer session the following day. So you really can dive deep into all of this. There's a tremendous amount of information. So this is just going to be an overview to give you a feel for what we're doing in stem cell technology. There's a tremendous amount of time that's gone into this. We started this research 12 years ago, and we put in $4.3 million just into development of this one product. So there's a huge amount behind this. But basically, in short, what we want to look at is how can we solve this problem of aging stem cells in the body. So in other words, stem cells are the universal cells that every other cell in our body is made from. And as we age, the stem cells are of course aging with us. And so what does that mean? Well, by the time we get over the age of 60, stem cells no longer produce the compounds that they need to repair the body. They're slowing down in their ability to get to an injury site, and eventually we're going to run out of stem cells. Now, stem cell injections are very expensive. It's still in its infancy, so most governments around the world have not approved some of the more advanced stem cell therapies, and that's because they really haven't been proven out yet in clinical studies. So we want to figure out what can we do to bring stem cell technology to everyone today and do it safely, produce a product that is very efficacious, and of course we need to make it affordable. So how are we going to do this? Now, I have over 100 patents globally now. I just got a new one actually issued today in Hong Kong.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was a stem cell patent that issued there. So we're well over 100 patents now. And just in the field of stem cell science and regeneration, there's well over 70 patents. So we've accomplished quite a bit. We have 9 clinical studies just on X39. That body of work continues to grow. Over 80 clinical studies on all of our products. And when we began our collaboration on X39, we started this with the National University of Ireland in Galway, and their Regenerative Medicine Institute is in the top 2% of stem cell research centers globally. We even received funding from Scientific Foundation Ireland for this pivotal work. And the initial goal was to see if we could activate the stem cells in the body with this device that I invented and we developed at our laboratories in San Diego. It's a novel form of electromagnetic field therapy. And so we did our basic laboratory work. We had several different animal models. And then of course, we worked with human beings. And this technique became so advanced that we were able to regenerate the peripheral nerves in human beings and completely reverse diabetic neuropathy. And this is really significant because it can prevent the need for an amputation. So this is a dramatic improvement in quality of life for people that need this. But anyway, long story short is in this very first study where we form an ulceration in the ear of the rabbit, we can see that by activating the stem cells in the body with energy, we can heal the injury more rapidly. And not only that, it is equivalent to giving an injection of stem cells. So this is really important. There's nothing wrong with stem cell therapy, but what this means is that we can activate the stem cells already in our body, do this safely and do it affordably, and get all the benefits of stem cell injections. So I'm going to go quickly through this part. One of the animal models that we use in San Diego is on a planaria, which is a flatworm. And we've been able to regenerate the heads of a planaria in less than 1 day. Now that's remarkable when you consider that normally it takes 17 days to regenerate their heads. So this is a very advanced technique. Okay, so how does our technology work? Well, this is a form of light therapy. And as you know, you go out in the sun and light will cause the body to make vitamin D. We're going to use the same approach by using very specific wavelengths of light to stimulate the skin to produce a very specific biochemical change within the body. Now, this technology, which we've been developing over the last 20 years, is in the form of a patch. We do not need to use active electronics like lamps and lasers and LEDs. Instead, this patch contains organic compounds that when placed on the skin, they're activated by body heat. And here's an illustration of what that looks like. These patches are going to reflect wavelengths of light in the infrared and the visible spectra. Now, this is also known as photobiomodulation. Some people think of it as phototherapy. They're closely related. But photobiomodulation is the term that we use when we're going to use light to produce a chemical change in the body. And by the way, over 10 years ago, the mechanisms for this were not really understood and they were not accepted by the scientific community. But today there's over 5,000 clinical studies that have been published, and now we really know how this all works. In fact, Michael Hamblin, who's a world authority on light therapy, photobiomodulation, he's had over 400 clinical studies that have been published, and he's based out of Harvard. So light therapy has really now come into modern times. So what we're going to do with light is we're going to elevate a compound called GHKCU. Now, this is a peptide, and it's a tripeptide. It's composed of 3 amino acids. And what's unique about this peptide is that it is a very high affinity for binding with copper. And this is where the magic happens, because copper peptide is able to do some pretty extraordinary things. One thing it will do is activate the stem cells, and the other thing is that it will act as a very powerful gene modulator. It will reset thousands of genes to a younger, healthier state. Now, Dr. Lorne Picard, who has put in over 45 years of his life into investigating copper peptide, discovered this peptide. And he was the one that first figured out that you could get cells to behave like younger cells by elevating copper peptide. And there are many clinical studies now on looking at how copper peptide gets involved in wound healing, stem cell activation, hair growth, and many other phenomena in the body. Now, we do our own studies. We hire independent researchers to do these studies. One study was performed by Dr. Caitlin Connor. Now, since then, we have 3 clinical studies where we've taken blood samples from people before and after using X39. And what we see is that within the first 24 hours of applying X39 that we see an increase in the peptide GHK. And within the first 7 days, we're already seeing elevation in copper peptide. And this is very significant because it's going to mean that within the first week of people using X39, they're going to start to see and feel results. We've also done clinical studies on how does X39 affect the metabolism in the body. And this is important. Now, this was again, I'm going to go through this really quick. You can get this study on our website. This was a 50-person, double-blind, placebo-controlled study, people over the age of 63, because, of course, as we age, the stem cell activity in the body declines. And again, we wanted to see what happens within the first 24 hours and the first 7 days of using X39. And importantly, we see an increase in the synthesis, utilization of amino acids. And this indicates elevated protein synthesis. In other words, you have an injury and it's going to repair more quickly. We also see improvements in short-term and mid-term memory. Blood pressure. If you have high blood pressure, you'll notice that your blood pressure is reducing. We don't want to make that as a claim, though, because it's a medical claim, but we have observed that in our clinical research. The ratio of muscle contractions in the heart improves. You get a relaxation response. Sleep improves within the first 24 hours. Overall energy and wellness improves. Even people start to breathe more deeply. Now, what would be some of the other benefits we might expect with X39? What would happen if we activated the stem cells in the brain? So we did this study with Dr. Gaetan Chevalier. This was our first pilot study, and now we've subsequently followed this up with a 50-person double-blind study. Session 1 is at baseline. Session 2 is at 3 weeks, and session 3 is at 6 weeks. And when you see these red areas, they're higher frequencies, and it's basically demonstrating an incoherence in the way different regions of the brain communicate with one another. So you can think of this as static or noise. So when the brain is communicating with different regions of the brain in harmony, that's when we're going to be in greatest states of calmness and wellness. And you can see this incredible shift after only 3 weeks of using X39. Now, what's remarkable about this is that this participant is a 77-year-old woman. And over the age of 70, we would expect little to no stem cell activity in the body. So if you're already a bit older and you're wondering, well, could this product really help me? Yes, absolutely. We've seen in our clinical studies that we can still activate and create stem cells with people of virtually any age. Now, for most people, you're going to see benefits after the first week, but some people it takes a little bit longer. This was an example, a 67-year-old man who began to see a change after 3 weeks, but now you can see after 6 weeks, there's a dramatic change. So if you're not getting results within the first 1 to 3 weeks, give it a little bit more time, and you can always get a full refund. Now, what's going to happen out in the real world? What are some of the benefits you might see? Well, one of the things that stem cells do really well is they heal injuries. They're a fundamental part of the healing process in the body. So what about if we've had an injury for a while? Well, this was a case where we went into pre-launch of X39 in July of 2018. And this was a gentleman in Italy who had had open heart surgery. So this scar was about a year old. And you can see that after only 30 days, even with an older injury, that there was a remarkable improvement in the reduction of the appearance of this scar. Now here is a more recent injury, And you can see after only 2 weeks, a dramatic reduction in the appearance of that scar. Now, when it comes to placement of X39, if you wish to apply it to the site of an injury, you can. You don't have to. You can apply it behind the neck, below the belly button, and it's going to work just fine. Now, here's a young man who lives in France. He had an accident just days before a job interview, and after only 5 days, he had a remarkable improvement with respect to these injuries. This is a gentleman who nearly lost his hand from an accident, and you can see after 2 months, dramatic improvement. I was meeting with my medical doctor today. I go for routine blood work so I can look at my hormones and inflammatory markers. I do that about once every 4 months. And I was showing him some of these before-after pictures, and he got unbelievably interested in X39, and I'm talking to him about doing a clinical study now in his area of interest. This was really remarkable. 9-year-old boy in Denmark. He caught his finger in a door. The doctor said, that the boy was going to lose it. His parents begged him to reattach the finger, and you could see the finger began to die. They applied X39, and only 2 months later, he regained the use of his finger. Now, X39 is not only for wound healing. What happens when we get stem cells to behave like younger, healthier cells? Well, this is Mandy in Australia, and she's become the poster child down there in Australia for X39 with our members. She began using X39 just simply for her health. And you can see that after 6 weeks, she already had a great effect. She saw some skin tightening. And that's because stem cells help to produce collagen. Collagen, of course, is the primary protein in the body. And in order to repair injuries, stem cells have to be able to trigger collagen production. So we can see a reduction in lines and wrinkles. She was delighted with her results. She continued using X39. And you can see after a year, there's been a dramatic change. Now, this was actually the first X39 testimonial we got during our launch with respect to what we would call youth renewal, or maybe it's better known as age reversal. And this is a 93-year-old woman in Denmark. She was suffering from a number of pretty significant health problems. Her daughter gave her X39 to help improve her health, and everyone was really amazed that after 2 months of using X39, how much younger and how much more energy she had. Okay, well, that is a very fast overview of X39 and what it is that we have. If you go to the science section of our website, we have a lot more information. You can see clinical studies there. Of course, lots of videos and other information on our website. And basically, I'd be happy to take some questions now.
Well, David, thank you so much for this presentation and for your time. I can tell you that you're making a tremendous difference on so many people in such a short amount of time. And that's what's so mind-blowing to us. I can tell you that in the last 2-3 weeks, we had probably over 100 testimonials. I mean, life-changing testimonials. We're just so thrilled to be here and to make this our home, and really want to thank you for everything you do for all of us.
Oh, that's great, Renate. Thank you so much. And, what's so important about that is Japan has been an unbelievably incredible growth market for us, as has Taiwan. Taiwan this year, their sales tripled compared to last year, and their sales in 2019 were triple of 2018. We've had similar growth in Japan. When we started out in Japan in January of 2019, we had about $150,000, $200,000 for the month in sales. This month we're at around $6 million for the month of September, just for the month. And the bottom line is the reason why both of those markets grew so rapidly is exactly because of what you just said. They get overwhelming number of testimonials, and that's what's driving the excitement and the business growth.
We have never seen anything like it, David. Unreal. We're loving it. So, David, one question we're getting a lot is how many patches can we wear? Because we are so excited, of course, about X39, but you also have some other wonderful things that are very beneficial to the body. So, you know, how many can we put on all at once?
So this is one of those, it depends. I would say for most people, if you are healthy and you just want the health and anti-aging benefits, you don't have to go crazy with this. And I would say you should be strategic about it. So in other words, let's say, for example, you're someone that you're interested in anti-aging, you're interested in physical performance, you want to perform at your best. A good protocol would be to combine X39 and carnosine. So, for example, for a long time, I was using X39 behind the neck and then carnosine below the belly button. Now, I've been studying acupuncture for 20 years, and I also like to place the energy. It's the first patch we had, so I still use energy patches to this day. And I like to follow a protocol that we developed years ago for stimulating different meridians in the body. So my protocol is to use X39, carnosine, and the energy patches, unless I'm experimenting with a new patch, and then it might be a little bit different. In the evening, you've got a couple of different options. Silent nights, if someone's having a problem with sleep, they could use that. If someone's using Alavita, many people find with Alavita, it puts them into a deep state of sleep, so you could use that. And then another great product, which I would really encourage, is Eon. Eon is a broad spectrum anti-inflammatory. We could do a webinar just on the health benefits of Eon because it triggers a very powerful anti-aging effect. And it is a perfect complement for X39. So if someone was on a budget and they only needed 2 patches, they only could afford 2 patches, I would recommend X39 during the day and then Eon at night. They're going to get tremendous benefits from this. But if someone wanted to explore a little more and try some of the other products, you certainly could do that. But you don't have to go crazy and put, 10 different patches on the body all at once.
That's a great answer. Thank you so much. That helps a lot. Another question we're getting off and on, David, that sometimes for some people, really they notice the difference almost in 24 to 48 hours. But for some people, it can also take a little longer. So what's going on when people don't feel it? Is it working right away?
So if you were to do a test, whether or not it would be a bioelectrical test, urine test, blood test, you would see in over 85% of the people that use X39 or other patches that there would be changes. For example, with IceWave, you can see a change in the autonomic nervous system within about the first 30 seconds or so. So these changes are occurring. So why don't people feel it or notice it? Well, there are going to be some people that are going to respond a little bit slower. Let's say that you have someone that's drinking a lot of tea or coffee or soda, and they're not drinking enough water, and they're dehydrated. That will slow down the response. We need water for tissue conductivity and to make energy and for detoxification. So if people are dehydrated, they're not going to respond as quickly. If people have nutrient deficiencies, they may not respond as quickly. Another really big area, and I know Dr. Karen, because she's an expert in acupuncture, is very well versed in this. When studies have been done on why people did not respond to acupuncture, it was because they were deficient in one of the electrolytes, calcium, potassium, magnesium. So Very often, because our diets are depleted today of vital nutrients, especially things like potassium and magnesium, this is going to interfere with the body's ability to create electrical signaling. And so because the patches depend on electrical signaling, this could slow down someone's results. So the bottom line is that if people have a healthy diet, if they supplement where needed, if they drink water, if they stay away from bad stuff, get regular exercise, proper sleep, they're going to have, much, much better results than someone that's not paying attention to those areas.
Very important to know. Thank you so much. One question is being asked: how does X39 affect hormones such as testosterone?
Okay, so X39 is designed to elevate copper peptide. This question is a little bit tricky on a number of different levels, because it will depend on any number of different factors. It'll depend on the individual. But I'll use one case specifically that we've studied. And this has to do with the activation of stem cells in the brain, which we showed in this study. So one of the benefits of X39 is that it's going to improve the quality of sleep. And this seems rather unusual. Why would a product give you energy during the day and sleep at night, right? Stimulants don't work that way. So what's going on there? Well, what we found is that X39 will increase production of GABA. So GABA is a very important compound in the brain. Most of you actually on the line here tonight probably know what it is that when drug companies are looking to develop a drug for improving sleep, things like Ambien, they're trying to target GABA receptors. So GABA will in turn relax the brain. It'll help lead the way for increases in melatonin. And then of course we go into a state of relaxation. Now, what does that have to do with stem cells? Well, GABA is also a regulator of another compound in the brain called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And as it turns out, BDNF regulates stem cell activity in the brain. So what's going on with X39 is that copper peptide is going to reset genes associated with GABA and BDNF to regulate stem cell activity in the brain, and in turn, we get a better quality of sleep. Well, to answer your question, when we go into a deeper state of sleep, hormones like testosterone will go up by about 30%. So
wow. It
would not be a direct method for a man to elevate testosterone, but it would be an important factor. If a man was over the age of 50 and he was interested in elevating testosterone, I'm 57, so I'm definitely interested in keeping my testosterone levels elevated. I would say it's a holistic strategy. You look at what you eat, exercise becomes the way you exercise becomes really important, and so on and so forth. Getting enough healthy fats in the diet, that becomes important. So X39, I would say, is a contributing factor to supporting healthy hormones in the body.
That's excellent news. I love it. The next question is, could you please advise if you can use ion patches while on SSRIs? Is there any interaction with medications?
So we don't know the answer to that. First, I'm not a medical doctor, and so I'm not attempting to give medical advice. And if someone has a serious health condition, they should speak with their medical doctor and have their medical doctor guide them. Now, that said, all of the patches stimulate the body with light. We're not putting any compounds in the body. And the important part of this is that we're simply trying to restore various peptides to healthy levels. So let's use our glutathione patch. Well, we can use Eon as an example. So Eon is going to elevate a peptide in the liver. And this is a peptide that normally declines by the time we reach age 30. It's a very important anti-aging peptide. I'm not going to mention the name of the peptide here. It's something we actually don't normally disclose, because if you were to Google the name of this peptide, you would see that its primary use is in disease treatment. And so we don't want our members making claims about that. The reason we're interested in it is because it produces dramatic anti-aging effects. And EON, as it turns out, is a broad spectrum anti-inflammatory. So when you look at, I'm taking a roundabout way to answer your question. When you look at different species that essentially don't age, like different types of mollusks, lobsters, one thing that you see is incredible regulation of oxidative stress and inflammatory stress. And so one of the things that EON will do is activate the primitive immune system, and as a result, you see a reduction in inflammatory cytokines, C-reactive proteins, lipid peroxides, homocysteine. So, but it's doing this because we are restoring levels of peptides in the body that would normally decline with age. So the odds of there being a drug interaction are practically zero. But I would say the one exception to this is when someone has had an organ transplant and they're on immunosuppressive drugs. That would be definitely a case where we would say someone should not use the patches, because our patches are going to improve immune function. And we've never done a study to look at that. So someone should ask their doctor, but bottom line, there shouldn't be any contraindications.
Perfect. That's very good to hear. The next question is a great one. Why is it called X39?
It's called X39 because it was the 39th patch that I had invented. And normally what we will do is when we launch a product, we will call it by its X designation. So EON was X15. And then we'll do this unveiling. We'll do the unveiling at the product launch. We'll do something like put up a poster of X15, and we take down the poster there. You will see the real name of the product behind it. And it's kind of a fun way for us to do product launches. But in this particular case, we went into pre-launch under the name X39. Everybody loved it, and it started to get, you know, some traction in the market. And so our leaders and our members asked us, they said, please don't change the name. We love the name X39. And so we said, all right, yeah, we kind of like it. Maybe we'll keep it this time. So that's how it happened.
I was wondering about the same thing. I'm really glad somebody asked. This is great. The next question, I'm not quite sure if it's a medical question, so I'm going to read it and I'll let you decide. Have you had any cases using X39 to help recover from brain injury?
Okay, how do I want to answer that? So actually, we have already funded a clinical study to look at this. And the reality of it is that if the study proves successful, probably the most that we would be able to say is, because our products are wellness products, is something along the lines of that our product is used to support overall health of the brain. We couldn't make a therapeutic claim. But as it turns out, the organization that we're dealing with is massive. If I told you the name of the organization, you'd say, oh my God, I can't believe you're working with them. Everybody on this call knows who they are. I'll put it that way. They're huge. And so it's number one, it's a privilege to work with the organization. And then there's some other things that may come from it. But basically what we would like to take a look at is there's several different products that we're using in this study. We're looking to see if we can reverse traumatic brain injuries by through specific pathways in the brain. And what's so intriguing to me about this is two different things. Number one, I believe I've discovered a pathway to enhance metabolism, very specific peptides that will lead to prevention and treatment of both Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's. And I also think it's possible to reverse ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. So this initial study is going to look at people that have traumatic brain injuries and then see if the tissue in the brain isn't dead, can we activate the stem cells and repair the damage. But this also, for people that don't have brain injuries, this also opens up some really interesting prospects, because we've already seen that we can put the brain into enhanced states of cognition and coherence. And normally people would have to practice meditation for 20 years to get into some of the states of cognition and coherence that we're observing. So functionally, what I would like to do is develop a product as an offshoot that could enhance cognition in ways that people don't have access to today. So in other words, where could this eventually lead? Well, I'd like to have a patch where if someone wanted a photographic memory, they could have that. And I don't think that's unreasonable. I actually think that's quite possible. So we're going in those directions with our research and laying the foundations for things that may happen, 5 years from now, let's say.
Well, David, we will be here 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
No question about it.
What else is coming down the pike with all your inventions? I'm just thrilled. I mean, this is just incredible. Boy. So the next question is, just curious, do you suggest using X39 every day or every second day? How is it most effective?
So in our clinical studies, people have used the patch daily. And the studies that we've looked at have been over a period of the first 24 hours, the first 7 days, the first 6 weeks. And then we even have a study now that's been going on about 9 months. We did one clinical study that was 6 months, and then this new clinical study that will complete this year will be a 12-month study. And that's all on the basis of people using X39 7 days per week, every day. Now, that said, if someone wanted to use it less frequently, they could. For financial reasons, that's certainly possible. We haven't studied, for example, what would happen if you used it 3 or 4 days per week. I'm sure you're still going to get benefits, and how different those benefits are from wearing it every day, we really don't know. We don't have the data to, definitively say.
That makes sense. During an acute injury, can one safely place 3 to 5 X39s on the point of injury?
It may not be necessary in the case of X39. Now, I'm going to have to be careful to avoid a medical claim here, but one of the patches that I will not travel without is the glutathione patch. And glutathione is something that you definitely can use more than one, and there are certain circumstances where it's highly desirable. So I was in Japan quite a few years ago now. This was actually when we just had the energy patches. I got a cut on the top of my foot, and I didn't realize it. And by the time that I got home, I had developed an infection, and it was quite serious, and I had to get an injection of antibiotics right into the foot. And, fortunately, the infection didn't get into the bone, and it was okay. Years later, after I developed the glutathione patch, I got an infection, but this time I was prepared. And I don't want people to think they can do this without antibiotics. So that's going to be my disclaimer. I will tell you my anecdotal story. So I got this infection. I applied 4 glutathione patches around the infection, and within about 2 hours, the pain had reduced by about 80%. By about 8 hours, it appeared that the infection was gone. Within about 24 hours, there was really no trace of redness or inflammation. So I have actually done this multiple times with glutathione, is suppress infections. But now with X39 with injuries, I would say that a better strategy would use X39 with carnosine or X39 with Eon. And the reason is that when you're activating stem cells, the stem cells go to the site of the injury and they're attracted to the inflammatory cytokines. Paradoxically, while the inflammatory cytokines attract the stem cells, they also kill the stem cells. So you'll see that when there's exogenous injections of stem cells, the inflammatory cytokines very quickly reduce the stem cell population. So in other words, managing inflammation at the injury site becomes critically important. So it might be better to do something like use X39 and Eon. Eon will help to manage the inflammation. X39 mobilizes the stem cells. So you don't have to use 4X39. It's probably not necessary.
Well, that was wonderful to learn about glutathione. I did not know that. That's great information. Thank you.
Yeah, I would have to say as a disclaimer, because we've never tested it clinically, that if someone has an infection, they probably should get antibiotics. But if they're somewhere remote, they don't have access to it. I've had extraordinarily great results with glutathione, so it's good for an emergency. How about that?
I will have it in my travel bag next week.
Great, great.
Super. So the next question is, thank you, David. Please explain further how GHK peptides reset the genes, and are the genes stimulating the stem cell to generate or GHK?
Yeah, so there is oh boy, this is a tough question. There are actually multiple things, not surprisingly, that are all happening at the same time. So let's even step this back a little bit further without getting too complicated so we can understand how the process initiates. So when you place the patch on the skin, the first thing that occurs is there's upregulation of a compound called cytochrome C oxidase. And this is actually how the basis of phototherapy was really discovered. In other words, this is the link between light therapy and how activation of the cells occurs. So you stimulate the skin with, in this case, infrared light, and this will lead to an increase in cytochrome C oxidase. And what's important about that is that this compound is found in what's called the electron transport chain in the cell, and this is part of how the cells make energy. So what I discovered was how to use this to trigger beta oxidation, increase in fatty acid metabolism. So you place X39 on the skin, the first thing that occurs is you get a net increase in the amount of energy the cell is making. So this is important because unless the cell has energy capacity, you know, it's like having gasoline in the tank of your car. Unless you've got energy in the cell, you can't do anything. So actually the very first step is the cell has to make energy. The second step is that we use very specific wavelengths of light to trigger the synthesis of GHK. So, and we even see this in the blood test. The first 24 hours, we get statistically significant increases in GHK. So GHK is a tripeptide. It's made of glycine, histidine, and lysine. These amino acids are synthesized together, and you see this increase. The next thing that happens is that GHK attaches itself to copper. And this happens somewhere between the first 24 hours to the first 7 days. Now, GHK on its own is going to have some metabolic benefits. So this is why even during the first 24 hours, people are going to see improvements in their sleep, their energy, and other things. Now, GHK, what makes it so powerful is that it's able to go in and reset genes. And this was actually first discovered by Dr. Lauren Picard. So to get into the mechanism of action on this is incredibly complex, and it's way beyond the scope. What I would encourage someone to do is, if you just simply Google GHK, you're going to find a whole list of clinical studies that get into the exact mechanisms for how they act as a gene modulator within the cells. But what's important about this is that GHK will upregulate a number of genes. So it's like they can switch the genes either up or down. And this is important because as we age, gene expression can change rather unfavorably, with some genes going on and some genes going off. So one of the things that happens with GHK is that it's able to chemically upregulate the P63 protein. Now, P63 is responsible for mobilization of the stem cells. And even more interestingly, when you elevate copper peptide in the skin, which of course happens with X39, this will trigger the skin stem cells to reverting to pluripotent cells. So in other words, you're getting this multiple layer of effects. First thing is the stem cells are behaving like younger cells, and you're getting an increase in the total number of stem cells in the body, and they're also universal stem cells that can go out and be used to support healing of all the various tissues. So this is why X39 is so powerful.
If I had you as my science teacher in high school, I would be in a completely different place today, probably in a lab right next to you.
Yeah, you know, I had a funny relationship with some of my science teachers. I actually didn't do very well in chemistry because I would always question the teacher, and I would say, well, hey, you know, that formula doesn't really make sense. You should be able to do it this way. And you know, she would say, well, Mr. Schmidt, you know, it doesn't really work that way. This is the way it works. And, you know, later I proved her wrong, but it took me 20 years. So, you know, I think if I took chemistry today, I'd probably do a little bit better, but.
I love it. This is a great story. Oh my gosh, David. So we have another question asking if it can help elderly people with balance.
So I suppose it would depend on what the problem would be. I don't know if I have enough information to answer the question properly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should X39 be used before a mammogram to help ensure negative results? The breast tissue, would it age reverse?
So we can't make any medical claims on the patches being used therapeutically. The only thing I think I would say about this is we have worked with an oncologist in Rome, and this is a very forward-thinking medical doctor who is looking at what's called prehabilitation. And the discussions that we've had with him are, we've already completed 2 clinical studies with him on the use of the patches after a woman has gone through chemotherapy. This would be for a woman that has breast cancer and they're going for radiation or chemotherapy. And what we want to do is see if we can avoid the toxic side effects. Now, what's so interesting about copper peptide, this actually is in the literature, and in practical terms, this will show up in the summer. We had a cruise in November down in the Bahamas before COVID, fortunately. And what many of our members found when using X39 is that they did not get sunburned. And there was actually prior research on copper peptide that shows that it can protect the fibroblasts from damage when exposed to radiation. So net end effect, copper peptide is a mild sunblock. Maybe not so mild. But the way that this was looked at clinically with injections of copper peptide is that if a person was going to go in for radiation treatment, could use copper peptide to protect the fibroblasts. And the reason for this is that the fibroblasts are typically damaged by radiation. This prevents the cells from being able to make collagen and then, of course, recover from the injury. So it was found that copper peptide could protect the fibroblasts, and that way people could recover. So, you know, that all said, we would have to say that if somebody wanted to use our products, if they had a very serious health condition, they should be working with their practitioner on developing a strategy that's right for them. You know, practitioners are going to have all different kinds of ideas about, like most oncologists, very traditional Western medical oncologists, don't want you doing anything. They don't want you taking supplements, right? Other more forward-thinking medical doctors will look at the body holistically and, you know, deal with it that way. So I would say that anything that could be done to improve overall immune system response, facilitate detoxification, is going to be a benefit.
Excellent. Very good to hear. Do we have any information on bone density?
What do I want to say about that? I think the only thing that I would say is we have a product that's in testing now. I'll just tell you a quick story. So I've worked with a scientist in Europe who's a scuba diver, incredible guy, a really incredible guy. And he made a discovery about a certain species of seaweed. And he found that this seaweed was white instead of green. And he's a biochemist, and he got the seaweed back to his lab, and he discovered there was a compound in the seaweed that was pulling the calcium out of the water into the seaweed. He isolated it. He started giving it to people, and a couple of really interesting things. Number one, as an oral supplement, it was able to pull calcium into the bone, reversing osteoporosis. The second thing is he turned it into a gel, and he gave it to some dentists, and he found that he could regrow lost bone in the jaw with this. So clinically, I've seen this done. My approach on it is a little bit different. What I've been researching is looking at how to activate stem cells to trigger the osteoblasts to increase bone synthesis, and we may have some evidence of it. So fortunately, it would not be, we would not need to make a medical claim about it. We could just simply say that it's going to be used for supporting overall health of the bone. But we may have some evidence that that's occurring in one of our clinical studies. So I've spoken with the principal investigator of the study, and we're looking at designing a separate study, especially for women that are experiencing age-related osteoporosis, and to see if we could reverse that. So that's definitely in our sights.
Oh my gosh. Wow. It's just amazing, David. You are amazing. The next question is asking about knee stiffness and pain and synovial fluids.
Okay, so we had our 6-year anniversary cruise in the Mediterranean, and I had the pleasure of meeting an orthopedic surgeon over there, and he was using our Eon patch and our glutathione patch to do some really amazing things on regenerating knees and even restoring cartilage, regrowing cartilage. Now, in orthopedic medicine, this is considered to be impossible, but it's actually being found out today, of course, that you can use stem cells to regrow lost cartilage. We also worked with a doctor who was a doctor for the San Francisco 49ers, and what he was finding was that if you supplemented with collagen protein, let's say 10, 20 grams a day, along with vitamin C, this would trigger the cells, the stem cells, to increase production of cartilage. Now, what's interesting about that is that vitamin C, glutathione will recycle vitamin C. So you take glutathione and it increases vitamin C, and vitamin C can trigger repair of damaged cartilage. So anyway, what do you do if you have lost cartilage and you especially have damaged your knees? What would you do? Well, you could, before we had X39, you would apply the glutathione patch to the outside of the knee and the Eon patch to the inside of the knee, and this works very, very well. I would strongly recommend that a person take a collagen protein supplement, minimum 10 to 20 grams per day, and let's say 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C once or twice a day. And the benefit to this, of course, is that in order to grow new cartilage, you need a protein source, and collagen just happens to be the preferred protein source for cartilage formation. Now, if you wanted to also use X39, you could just simply apply X39 behind the neck or below the belly button, and I'd still recommend glutathione and Eon around the actual knee.
Perfect. Well, David, I'm looking at the time. The hour was just flying by.
It flew by.
And we still have probably about 50 questions left for you.
You want to pick one more?
Yeah, so I would like to pick one that I also get quite frequently, and that is, do I have to take X39 forever, or can I just take it for a short period of time?
I would look at this the way that you look at vitamins, meaning that, if you're going to take a specific vitamin, let's say like if you took a nutrient like resveratrol and you wanted to use this as for longevity, you really have to use it the rest of your life. If you're using a vitamin to help recover from, some kind of illness, protect you from a virus, then that's going to be more acute. So it all depends on how you're using it. If someone wanted to use X39 to help them recover from an injury, they could certainly do that. But if they wanted to use it for the longevity benefits, for which there are many, then that's something, that you use on a long-term basis.
David, I don't know how to thank you for everything you do.
Believe me, it's my pleasure. Thank you.